Hello everyone, welcome to the third week's lecture. Today we're going to talk about one paper that tries to causally estimate a very important policy's effect on consumption and poverty in the Indian context. And we will sort of, through the discussion of this paper, try to not learn just about whether that particular policy was effective or not, but also try to get some sense of how to actually use one of these methods that I had talked about in the previous class, and what it takes to do that. So sort of give you a kind of a hands-on experience in terms of trying to see these methods in action. And so the policy that I'm going to talk about today is the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. You probably have heard about this in the various contexts, including in newspapers and in public policy debates. It is a very important policy, and therefore it's really important that we as researchers and policymakers and the government have a sense to what extent the program is working, to what extent the money that is being spent under this program is actually leading to positive and desirable outcomes. So sort of that's our main aim today, is to causally estimate the effect of this National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or scheme on consumption and poverty in the rural sector. As many of you already know, probably the NREGA or NREGS are now also known as NREGA, named after Mahatma Gandhi. It's one of the largest public workfare programs in the world. What are public workfare programs? These are programs run by government where people who are interested, who are sort of interested in earning money, can sign up and work under various public works, so basically creation of local public goods like roads, etc., and get money in exchange. Or in sometimes these are food for work program where people work under this program to get access to food. So these kinds of programs are prevalent in many developing countries. This is sort of seen as a redistributive program. Why redistributive? Well, because these programs are public programs run by government using tax money, but these benefit overwhelmingly people who are in the poorer section in the society. So basically, because you will sort of sign up and actually do these kinds of manual labor only if you really need money or food, and therefore this is sort of a tax collected from everybody and going primarily to the poorer section of society. So in that sense, it's a redistributive program, but it's a redistributive program through the process of self-selection into work and actually doing manual work. Okay, so hence the public workfare program. This particular program, NREGA, in India was introduced in the year 2006. It sort of there were similar programs before. So, for example, Maharashtra had a similar employment guarantee program in place in their own state since 1970s. But this is kind of a national policy that was introduced by the central government. It was also came after a series of sort of mobilizations and interventions by policymakers and policy activists in the public policy debate, arguing for a need for such a program. So it comes in 2006, and it grows over time, and both in terms of its geographic reach as well as the money invested by government under this policy. So by about 2012-13, the size of the program is about 0.5% of GDP. Or in monetary value, it's about 7.5 US dollars, $7.5 billion in USD in 2012-13. Now to benchmark, whether this number is very high or low, it's less expensive than, for example, a similar program in Ethiopia, which is called the Productive Safety Net Program. It's about 2% of GDP in 2007 in Ethiopia. However, it's more expensive than what the Chinese government allocates towards their integrated rural development program, which was about $4 billion in 2004, which is both less in terms of absolute value and definitely much less in terms of percentage of GDP, right? So it's somewhere in the middle, and so it's not particularly astronomical in its expenses. Okay, what are the some of the objectives of the program, or what are the sort of broad rules of the program? So what does the program do? So it entitles every rural household to 100 days of work at minimum wage. So these minimum wages are set by each state government, and then Center for sets a floor, and then each state can sort of have their own minimum wages, which can be above the minimum wage set by the central government, but cannot go below that. And these minimum wages are revised every year. Now, this entitlement is seen as a right, and hence the title of the Act, National Rural Employment Guarantee. So it's a guarantee in the sense that the Act says that if adult members in every rural household are entitled to or have the right to at least 100 days of work, and therefore the government is coming in to provide at least 100 days of work. Moreover, if you demand that to get work, and you are not provided work within 15 days of demanding, then you are entitled to an unemployment insurance money. Okay, that's how it's sort of enshrined in the form of that you can demand work, and if you don't get it within 15 days, you can actually get money. What are the kind of works that we are talking about? These are sort of local public goods creation works in villages of India. So even though it's a central government program, the program is actually implemented locally by each village panchayat. Okay? So each village panchayat is in charge of creating a list of work that the village needs. So it could be, for example, building a new road, or repairing a new road, or creating wells, drains, or maintenance of local primary schools or health centers, etc. So various kinds of public goods and public infrastructure. The work would be sort of building new ones, or as well as maintaining replenishing old ones. So that's the nature of the work. So these are primarily manual, unskilled labor, and the process is that the local government is, since it's the implementing agency, it receives demand for work from local villagers. So if I'm a local villager, then I can I have to create a job card under this program. So I'll have a job card so that my name is registered, and then I can demand work in a particular time. The way it happens is that either I go and demand work, or the local government comes up with the list of works for say half a year, and then people sort of show up and say that they are willing to work under one of these listed projects. Okay, so it's partly demand based, but of course the efficacy with which local government implements these projects matters a lot in terms of how much work gets generated and how much in the process, how much people find employment. So there is a sort of supply side aspect as well in the form of motivation and efficiency or the governance quality of the local panchayat. But whatever it is, the way it happens is that people sort of self-select into going to work. Okay, so you have to be ready to do this kind of manual labor to get payments. And so the idea is that even though every rural household has this entitlement to 100 days of work under this program, only those who are willing to do this kind of manual labor will get a job card done and will actually sign up to do one of these listed projects. So what people have observed is that it's systematically, the people who are poorer tend to work in this program. So in that way, it's a nice self-selection procedure where the government doesn't have to decide who's poor and who's not. The program is designed in a way such that systematically poorer sections of the people are more likely to enroll for this program. So that's sort of related to targeting. What is it doing in terms of its purpose? So the idea is that rural villagers who do not own land, they work as agricultural laborers in the agricultural economy, in the rural economy. But agriculture is a very seasonal activity, right? So during the lean season, which is in the Rabi season, so sort of the first 6 months of any calendar year, roughly speaking, so that's the lean season. So that's when agriculture activity is relatively low, and a lot of the demand for agricultural labor is low. And so those who don't plant would not find ready employment this particular season every year. Okay, and the way NREGA because NREGA gives 100 days of employment guarantee, NREGA can fill this vacuum. So basically, it's an insurance for rural poor against unemployment during this Rabi season. Okay, so the way this program works is, if you sort of look at their administrative data, it's the uptake of this program or work done under this program is relatively low during the monsoon season, the main agricultural season, the Kharif season, and during the Rabi season, which is basically the winter running into the summer. That's when the work picks up. That's when there is a lot of activity under NREGA, and that's because people don't find employment outside this, and even if they find employment, the wages would be low because people know that there is a lot of labor hanging around because it's the lean season. So the wages would be low, but so that's when NREGA comes in and sort of sets a floor and provides employment. So it has a sort of an insurance purpose to it in terms of filling this gap. Okay. Let's talk about some of the administrative details, as this will be important in identifying the causal effect of this program. The scheme was introduced in 3 phases, so it was not introduced in the entire country at one go. It was introduced if it was introduced in a district, it was introduced to all the villages in a district, right? So district was sort of the units at which this was the decision to roll out was being made, and the scheme was introduced in 3 phases. So in the first phase, 200 districts were selected in April 2006, and this was sort of the first. The program started at that time on 200 districts. After a year, another 130 districts were introduced, so it was expanded to 330 districts in total. And then another 295 districts were introduced in April 2008. Right? So in 3 years, 2006, 7, 8, three chunks of districts were added. And by the end of third phase, there was very few districts that were left. So it was pretty much covered all over India by April 2008. Okay. Now the paper that I'm going to talk about is an yet unpublished paper from 2019. But there are already several papers that tries to look at the effect of NREGA on various outcomes of interest, such as wages, on whether it led to lack of migration from rural to urban. Right? Why? Because during the lean season, in absence of NREGA, the people would often migrate to towns or cities to look for work. So these are temporary migrants, right? Would work in, say, construction sites in urban area for a few months and then go back again during agricultural season to work in the fields. And because NREGA provides this kind of insurance, the idea is to check whether it actually reduces migration to urban area and on consumption, agricultural activities, etc. Now, most of these papers, these previous studies that look at effect of NREGA on all these things, they use a difference in difference framework. Why? Because you have a phased rollout. So if you can imagine the map of India, certain chunks of districts are coming under the program in 3 different years. And so you can look at pre-NREGA for every chunk. You can look at pre-NREGA and post-NREGA outcomes across districts, right? So in 2006, you can look at effect of NREGA on phase 1 district pre-2006 and in 2006 relative to, so the phase 1 district will be the treatment group. What would be the control here? Control would be the phase 2 and phase 3, right? Because those in 2006 are yet to come under NREGA. Again in 2007, now both phase 1 and phase 2 are part of treatment. So now there is a new treatment group, which is phase 1 plus phase 2. In 2007, phase 3 is the control. Okay? And then you see again pre-2006 outcomes in these two groups and outcomes in 2007, right? And in 2008, everybody is covered, so there is no control group. But for 2006 and 7, we have a treatment and a control, even though the treatment and the control districts are different in 2006 and 2007. But we can define a pre and a post for every phase. We can define a pre and a post, and we can check pre versus post in treatment versus control for the first 2 phases. Okay, so that's the difference in difference. Okay, so that's how they estimate it. So they're for example, they want to see migration before 2006, migration in a district before 2006 and after 2006 in phase 1 versus phase 2 and 3 in 2006, and in phase 1 plus phase 2 vis-a-vis phase 3 in 2007, whether these are systematically different. Okay, so that's the idea. And that's the sort of standard method that most of the papers used. Now comes this paper by Cloner and Aldiguez that I'll be uploading in the Google Drive, and I should definitely take a look at this paper. So this paper argues that using difference in difference technology is not the right method here. It has problems, and they sort of argue that there are two separate problems. We have talked about them in abstract, but it's nice to talk about it using this example. So the first is the selection problem. So remember, one of the assumptions in difference in difference is that the treatments are assigned kind of exogenously, in the sense that the set of districts that are getting treated need not be different. It can be different on average, but it has to be the case that the trend in the outcome variable in the treatment versus control group before the treatment happens is parallel. So that was the parallel trend assumption. The authors of this paper point out that, first of all, less developed districts were chosen in the earlier phases. So this phasing out of the program was done in a specific way. The government first chose the less developed districts to introduce this first, because they thought that this will have the maximum impact, so might as well start there early. So that's the first point. So these are less developed districts. So consumption to begin with is lower than consumption in the other district that are in the control group, because these are less developed. Second, but that's fine. The point is that the main outcome variables, consumption and poverty, actually are not moving parallelly during the pre-NREGA period between the across the treatment and the control group. So first, there is a level difference, which is that consumption and poverty is poverty is higher, so consumption is lower in treatment group in the pre-NREGA period. So that's the level difference, which is fine. That can happen in DID. But the consumption in the poorer district is moving rapidly than the consumption in the control district. So the gap between treatment and control is actually going down over time, even before the treatment happens. So basically the idea is that there are districts which are poorer than other districts, and these districts are catching up to the better districts. Why that might happen? Because this is during the act comes into play in 2006. So during 2004-5, there is high economic growth happening, and that is sort of disproportionately benefiting the poorer districts. So the poorer districts are growing faster than the richer district. So there is sort of the gap is reducing going into the NREGA, going into 2006. Okay, so the author's point is that there is no parallel trend here. So already the gap between treatment and control in terms of consumption or poverty is reducing. So if we don't take that into account, then after the treatment, if you find a narrower gap, it could be because the gap was already kind of reducing. Part of it, at least, could be definitely this sort of trend in reduction in the gap between the two groups, and therefore we cannot directly apply the difference in difference method here. So that's their first argument, that there is a selection problem. The kind of districts that are selected into treatment are moving differentially than the control prior to the treatment. And the second is omitted variable bias, which is also something I mentioned while discussing DID. So here the author's point is that when NREGA is getting implemented, around the same time there are two other programs getting implemented as well that also benefits the relatively poorer districts. So one is the Backward Region Grant Fund. It again identifies a set of districts to be backward and provides additional resources to local governments to produce local public goods, and it can have an impact on consumption of people, because they can work under these projects funded by the Backward Region Grant Fund, and that comes into effect in 2007-8, which is when the second phase is getting rolled out. And the other program, which is sort of relatively smaller, is the PM's rehabilitation package for farmers in suicide-prone districts. So again, that's target to statistically speaking poorer districts, and it comes into effect in 2006, exactly the year when which NREGA starts. So so the authors claim that there are about 265 out of 330 phase 1 and phase 2 districts that receive these other programs, which would also benefit these districts. So if we don't take that into account, then we'll be attributing changes in consumption or reduction in poverty to NREGA. Part of it should go to some of these other programs, right? So we'll be overestimating the effect of NREGA if we don't consider this. So basically, there are you can think about other treatment happening around the same time as the NREGA treatment happens, and its effect on the treatment group is going to be different than the control group. That's important, right? Because if there is some other treatment that is happening at the time of NREGA, but that affects all districts, treatment plus control equally, then you are fine, because anyways you are measuring the treatment effect by comparing treatment and control districts. But in these other programs like this backward region grant fund, if they systematically affect the treatment districts more than the control districts, then you are confounding NREGA's effect with these other programs, right? And that's the source of the problem. So that makes the DID approach rather suspect. So the author proposes a new strategy, and this is going to be a regression discontinuity design strategy that they claim is going to address both of these problems. Okay, so let's now discuss how to identify the causal effect using the RDD strategy proposed by the authors. So what the author is going to do is they're going to look very closely at how exactly the way that these districts were chosen in the first and the second and the third phase, and they're going to use certain details of this selection method to create an RDD strategy, right? This is also going to be a very nice example to highlight the point that it's really important to know the details of the program in order to do a good job in identifying its causal effect. Okay, so the authors are going to focus on 2007-8, the year when phase 2 rollout happens, and a year prior to phase 3 rollout, right? So he's going to use phase 3 districts as his sort of the control district, so to speak. So he's going to look at outcomes in 2007-8 when phase 3 rollout hasn't happened. So the phase 3 districts are yet to be exposed to NREGA, while phase 1 and phase 2 districts have been exposed. Now, there were two primary categories that were of districts that were used to identify which district would go to phase 1, phase 2, and which district would go to phase 3. The first category is called a priority category, and the rest are called non-priority category districts. So what are the priority districts? So this is a list of districts that is identified using these three different characteristics. So whether the district is under Maoist insurgency, so these are more likely to be underdeveloped for a long time, so that's sort of resulted in Maoist insurgency in these areas. Districts that are going through agrarian distress, another marker of poverty, and generally low human development, so education and health outcomes are also low. So basically the government and the planning commission at that time, they looked at which districts are under Maoist insurgency, which districts are under agricultural distress, and they had a score for low human development. They looked at which districts are low in human development. Okay, and there were 182 such districts. and these districts were added in phase 1 and phase 2. All of them were added by end of, basically by 2007 all of the 182 priority districts came under the NREGA. It is not clear how within these 182 the phase 1 versus phase 2 division happened. The authors do not comment on that, but their point is that since these were quote-unquote priority districts, the government didn't wait till phase 3 to include them. So that's sort of one category. But that's not the category they're anyways interested in for identification. They're interested in the other one category, which is the non-priority districts. So there are about 93 non-priority districts that are selected in phase 2, and there are a bunch of them that are not selected in phase 2, which sort of stays in phase 3. So basically the rest are, the whole number of districts minus 182 is non-priority, and of the non-priority 93 are selected in phase 2. Okay. Now they point out that the selection procedure for non-priority was based on a specific ranking, which is called backwardness ranking, that was created by the Planning Commission many years ago, specifically in 2003. So this ranking was created by Planning Commission in 2003. They were sitting there. When the government had to make a decision on which districts to introduce in phase 2, apart from the priority districts, because maybe the priority districts that are left to be added in after the phase 1 were less than the total number of districts that they wanted to add, and so they had to select some non-priority districts as well. So the question was which non-priority district they should choose, and so they said, okay, there is this backwardness ranking lying around in Planning Commission, let's use that. And so basically they started from the lowest ranked districts, and they went up till they filled the slot. So and they did that for every state specifically, and I'm going to come to this backwardness ranking and selection into phase 2 NREGA. So basically they use the ranking, and they're going to select for every state they're going to go and select the districts that are low in the ranking. Okay, and they're going to do it state by state, because they realize that if they do it for all of India jointly, then maybe there will be certain states that will be overrepresented, which will lead to political problems. So they're going to select some district from every major state. So they sort of did this state by state. So for every state they selected the low ranked districts. So that's the sort of main detail. Going further into it, so this is a description, graphical depiction of the NREGA and non-NREGA districts on the left panel. So here you see districts. So in all this analysis, they are leaving out districts which contain a major city, a metro city, right? So they are leaving out those districts. So they're those are primarily urban districts. So they're looking at only rural districts. So these red colored districts are non-NREGA districts by 2007-8. So these are and the rest of the green ones are phase 1 plus phase 2 NREGA districts, because this is 2007-8. This is saying that if I sort of identify, these light colored greens are the priority districts. So if you can sort of think about priority districts separately, let's focus on the non-priority districts. Among the non-priority districts, which are the dark green and the red colored districts, you see some of them, so basically those are all, the dark green plus red are all non-priority districts. Of them, some get selected in phase 2, so these are dark green ones, and the rest, the red ones, get selected the year after. Okay, so that's the control in 2007-8. So hopefully this was clear. If you are not clear, then please refer to the paper. Okay, so here is a little bit of a messy graph. So let me explain what is going on. So here the authors are plotting the backwardness rank of all the districts, including the priority districts, even though for priority districts there was no backward rank, there was no selection based on backwardness rank. But anyways, they're plotting it for all the states separately. So for each state, each of the districts are each marker. So the green cross one are the priority districts, which are already selected by 2007-8. The green circle ones are the non-priority districts, which get selected in 2007-8 as part of phase 2. The red circle ones are the non-priority districts that do not get selected in phase 2 in 2007-8. They get selected in phase 3. Okay. Now you see the green cross one are sort of all over the place for a given state, because the green cross one are the priority district. If you see, there are priority district all over the ranking, backwardness ranking, because backwardness ranking was not used to select districts, to select the priority districts into NREGA. All the priority districts are selected into NREGA by phase 1, by phase 2. So you see sort of a wide variation. But if you look at if you sort of try to focus on the non-priority districts, which are the green circle and the red circle, you see there they systematically seem to be ranked. The green ones are below the red ones for every state, more or less, right? Which means that what they're claiming is indeed true, that if you use the backwardness ranking for the non-priority districts, you see that their rank, their the lower ranked districts for each state separately are the ones that are still getting selected in phase 2. The red ones, which are systematically above the green circle ones, and they are not getting selected in phase 2, they are getting selected in phase 3. So what the author is going to do, find out these cutoff for each state. For each state, what rank is the sort of, the highest rank. So lower the rank, the worse the district is in terms of backwardness, right? So 100 means 100 is a worse or more backward district than 200. Okay, so that's what it means. And so they're going to find out the highest rank, the highest value of the rank, such that they're all below which all of them are green and above which it's red, and they're going to deduct that rank, that cutoff rank, from all the ranks of all the non-priority districts. So basically, it's called centralization. You are normalizing. For every state, you find out the cutoff above which it's red and below which it's green. And so you deduct the value of the rank from all the ranks of all the non-priority districts. So then basically the cutoff becomes 0, right? And below cutoff you get negative, above cutoff you get positive. And you do that for every state. So now 0 basically means it's 0 for all state, means that that's the cutoff for all states. So you have a uniform cutoff, because if you don't do this normalization, then different states have different cutoffs, right? But for RDD you need one running variable for the entire sample, and one cutoff in the running variable. And so that's why what they want to do is they use the rank as the running variable, but in different state different cutoffs are being used to demarcate the green and the red region. So in some states it's high, in some states it's low, in order to ensure that everybody has the same cutoff across the entire sample. You normalize it, you sort of deduct the relevant cutoff for each state from all the ranks of districts of that state, right? If you do that, you get a really nice picture like this. So on the vertical axis, now you have this normalized rank. Negative means these are below the cutoff, right? Because you have deducted the cutoff rank from everybody's rank. So if you're below the rank, meaning if you're a worse district than the cutoff district, then you are selected into the program. So these are negative ranks. For all states, it's become uniform now. Above the rank, you are not selected into the program in 7-8. You will be selected next year. So in 7-8, you are part of control. So those are the red. Okay, and you see, some sort of, you see some error in terms of this. It's not completely foolproof. There are these some differential selection. So here it should be green, but it's red, and here it should be red, it's green. So there are some mismatches, but that could be because of various administrative errors in selection method. But overall, it gives a very nice cutoff. So that's the first point. So that there is a cutoff rule that the authors can use. So that gives them a regression discontinuity design. Why discontinuity? Because the normalized ranks, you can think of that as a continuous variable. That's a running variable, below which you get treated, above which you don't get treated, right? Now the question is, which districts, which states can offer both a treatment and a control. Notice that there are states like Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal that only got control, they got no treatment, right? So you have to remove those districts as well. Sorry, you have to remove those states. And then there are other states that are available. What they're going to do is focus on 2 districts. So each circle is a district. Focus on 2 districts below the cutoff and 2 districts above the cutoff. If you can see, there is a dotted horizontal line faintly visible around the threshold 0 line. So that's the bandwidth that they are selecting. So they are selecting 2 ranks above the threshold and 2 ranks below the threshold as the sort of bandwidth. Why they are doing it? They can't go too wide, because then the districts would be very different. And again, because you have to worry about this, you have to always remember that these districts are systematically have different, they're growing differently than the control districts, even in absence of NREGA. The good thing is that in RDD you don't need parallel trend resorption, but you really need to ensure that these districts are not discontinuously different than the control districts before the treatment happens, before the NREGA happened. And they're going to try to show that this is indeed the case. So that's why they have to sort of stick to districts which are in the immediate neighborhood. But they sort of run into, they can't choose too narrow, because otherwise they'll run into sample size issues. The sample will become too small. So that's sort of, that sort of is the trade-off. There are some states that have star marked in them. These states are called star states. These are well performers in NREGA. And the other states are non-star states, which are not performing as well. They are not implementing the program, NREGA program, as well. And this sort of demarcation of star versus non-star states come from earlier studies. So there is a paper by Imbert and Papp in 2011 who use they use similar kind of data that they are using, and they show that the star states are the main states that are implementing the NREGA program heavily. They are very good in terms of implementing it well, giving out the money on time, etc. And there are these non-star states which are kind of not particularly functional in terms of implementing this program well. So there's not a lot of activity getting generated in these states. So the star states are Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu. These are, so basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're going to call these 6 states the star states as identified by previous studies, and the other states on which they can run the regression. So basically, Gujarat, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, etc., Odisha, Punjab. These are going to be the non-star states. Okay. um, they are going to look at estimates for the star states and the non-star states separately. Okay? Let me stop my video here. In the next video, I'm going to continue with the discussion of this paper, and I also talk about the instrumental variables.